Welcome to another edition of For the Players. My name is K Murdoch, and I am joined by the usual crew, my host, co-host, should I say, and a fellow Proxima people. The good man I guess on my screen, he's on my right, but who knows how this is going to turn out. The one and only, he is the head of the studio, Proxima Studio, Harvey Newman. Insert applause.
Oh yeah.
The weather, I was gonna talk about how good the weather was, but I don't want to make you all envious or whatever, because it sounds like out in Edinburgh you don't see much sun, right?
Yeah, no. Like, just for people to know, since this is brand new, Kyle lives in California under the sun in an amazing place. He's obviously looking already tan and looking amazing. And I live in Scotland, Edinburgh specifically, where it's actually the opposite.
Okay.
Everything is the opposite, which is not that nice. But it's a beautiful city, though. It's great. It's
Right.
really amazing.
It's just also funny to me that when I log on and we have these recordings, you all are just like ending your day, whereas I'm literally on the polar opposite side and I'm starting my day. Like, I have a bunch of tasks I need to knock out, like, after we record and stuff. So it's kind of cool, right? It's like just
Yeah,
time.
it's cool.
What you
It's
gonna
like
do?
we are like a company that actually works worldwide. We have
Right.
people all over the world, which is a beautiful thing, I think.
Right. Well, I want to go ahead and just get into it. I have a couple things I want to talk to you all about. The first thing I wanted to kind of ask you all about is, we're just coming off the weekend, and I'm always curious, like, what game related things did you do over the weekend? Did you play anything? Was there a new piece of hardware or software that helps you do your job in this games industry that was released or came out that you're excited about? Like, what have you been doing? I'll tell you in a minute what I did game related, but I defer to you all first. Like, what are you playing, Harvey?
Me? Oh, a bunch of different things. So like this season for me is BAFTA season. And so what that means to me is that I'm a BAFTA member, and at this time of the year is basically voting session or like judging session.
Yeah, what is BAFTA?
What is BAFTA? Absolutely. So BAFTA, they are basically like a charity award, and is the equivalent of what the Oscars would be in America. So if you imagine the Oscars having some type of game award, that would be the BAFTAs. They also have awards for television and film, and earning a BAFTA here in Europe and specifically in the UK is a massive deal. So it's one of the things that you definitely want, especially if you are a Brit, if you live in the UK. By earning a BAFTA is like a big decoration, a big amazing thing that you've done. Nice. So a few years back, I joined BAFTA. They allow me to join the group, especially for animation. So at this time of the year, they start sending games for you to test, for you to play, and then you have to basically rate the games and give your feedback and all that stuff. And when a lot of people do that, and there's like hundreds upon hundreds of people doing BAFTA voting, then eventually one comes on top, and this is how the BAFTA awards are awarded. And they normally get awarded in February, like I think it's February next year.
So will you go to the award ceremony too?
I never been, but
Okay.
yeah, you get invited to the ceremony as well, which is great. I always wanted to go, but because I live in Edinburgh and it's quite far, London, from me, I can never, and I have kids, I can never actually make it. But one day I will. So anyways, all that to say that this time of the year is just me like trying to play through as many games as possible, so I can actually have a true vision and a sense for what's out there, the things that I like personally, the things that people are playing out there that perhaps I don't like. For example, horror games, I'm not a big fan, but at the same time, when Silent Hill or anything like that comes along that people playing,
Resident Evil
like, Resident Evil, when people are raving about it, you need to play it to actually find out what's the buzz and how does it play and what's the good things and the bad things about it. So that's what I do right now. And believe it or not, like the things that I'm trying to get away from in order to play other games is Super Mario Wonder. I love that game. And I'm trying to finish Zelda. So those two games I was playing for pleasure, for enjoyment, because I wanted to play them. It's my me time. Playing with my daughters is amazing, but I have to kind of like stop and play other games because of the situation. So that's basically the life that I'm living right now as a gamer.
Yeah, my daughters are really into that, and they're into there's another Sonic game. It's like similar to what they did for Wonder. They're just
Mm.
re-releasing Sonic, but now you can play through the game as like Knuckles and Tails and Amy Rose, and
Yeah.
it's interesting how Sega tends to try to mirror as much as they can Nintendo.
Yeah. It's actually very curious because you revived a little bit of that Sega Nintendo rivalry
Yes,
back in the day. People were
yes,
talking about it, like how two games came out at the same time, just like they
right,
used to be,
right.
which is really awesome. So yeah, I love that.
But there were some games, like for instance, I remember one thing, I'm dating myself, but when Mortal Kombat came out for the systems, and the Super Nintendo one graphically killed the Genesis one, but the reason why my friends like to play the Genesis one was it had blood, and the fatalities were like, I mean,
Yeah.
were just more akin to what you saw in the arcade. On the Nintendo, they replaced. It was like very controversial. I don't know if you all remember this. They replaced blood, well, at least here in the States, should I say, with sweat. So when you hit the people, instead of the blood coming out, it would be gray. They made it gray, and they changed a lot of the fatalities. Like obviously, you weren't decapitating people with Sub Zero. I think the only one you could kind of do was Scorpion setting the person on fire, but it wasn't. They didn't show the bones and everything. Like it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was very interesting. We used to do that
Was the
all the
lane
time.
version,
Whenever, yes, yep.
right?
So Mortal Kombat, man, that was one that we played more on the Genesis than the Super Nintendo. But for the most part, Super Nintendo, like all the way, you know.
Yeah, there's so many things we have to talk about in this podcast, man. Like
Yes.
same thing with best consoles from either
Oh,
Sega
that's a
or
whole
Nintendo.
nother.
That's a whole nother conversation
That's a
that I'm
whole
really
nother
passionate about.
conversation.
It's gonna be a long conversation as well.
Yeah,
So
I'll try to keep you all on task, and I had a couple things I wanted to bring up, and the last thing I'll say, just to kind of close out what we're playing. I mentioned Sega. I for some reason went back and replayed this game. I love this series, and I started playing it right before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit, and ironically, whereas a lot of people started playing games, I kind of didn't play as much games, probably because I was at home with my wife and kids, and it was harder to get the kind of gaming I wanted in. But it was a game called Valkyria Chronicles that I used
oh
to,
yeah,
yeah. So I
I
went
remember that.
back and played. I started playing 4, which came out in like 2019 or 18. I hadn't played it. I forgot it was on my system, and so I'd been playing that. And Sega is the, I guess, publisher of it. So I love it. I finally beat it, but I'm like kind of now sad because as far as I know, they haven't talked about making a fifth one because I'm playing the fourth one. And I've been playing that series since it came out on PS2 and PSP. So anyway,
Amazing.
just wrapping that up. Speaking of another kind of IP that people were very excited about, I mean, we had Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which Harvey mentioned he's playing through. And this is something I've been seeing pop up probably just as much, well, maybe not as much. But one rumor of a game or something that we played that was going to be turned into a film for the longest time was Akira. Remember that the Japanimation movie?
Yeah, of
They
course.
were supposed to be doing a live action one, and I would say on top of Akira, I'm starting to see a lot of people talk about this, and it's been confirmed now that they're making a live action Zelda movie. I saw Miyamoto like there at the presser introducing and talking about it. And originally I thought it was going to be done in coordination with Netflix, but I'm not hearing Netflix's name about that. Have you all heard anything else about that?
Yeah, I heard Sony is going to be the people
Gotcha.
the studio that is going to.
Wow, really?
Well,
Sony doing a
yeah,
Nintendo
they are.
IP?
That's what everybody. Yeah, that's what I just saw. I think it was in Engadget or something like that. So
Right.
Sony is actually co-funding also the project. So it's Nintendo. So
Wow.
yeah, it's like. So Nintendo is paying some of the money, and Sony's paying some of the part of the money, and then Sony's going to
Wow.
publish it and distribute it and market it and things like that. And then it's going to also be a live action instead of animation, which
Right.
has people up in hands again because the Mario movie was so successful. So everybody's like, can we have an animated version of
Right.
Zelda? However, personally, I think it makes 100% sense to actually make a live action version of Zelda because Zelda is much more uncharted than it is animated and cute and cartoony.
Mm.
Like if you really play the game, even though the game looks cute and cartoony, Uh, but I do think that going through the dungeons, going through the adventures, all the fighting, all the like, discovery and solving puzzles and stuff like that, all of that like lends itself to actually have a live action movie really, really well done.
Right.
Plus, they did the Mario movie with Sony Pictures Animation, which is
Yes.
also part of the
And
family.
Illumination, yeah, who did the
Exactly.
Minions and yeah.
So I think that being part of the family, I think will mean that Miyamoto. I don't think Miyamoto is going to allow for the story to be bad. Like Miyamoto is gonna for sure allow for a story in the film, no matter what medium, to be as good as a game. And if he actually can make absolutely amazing games of any Zelda, because oversees all things Nintendo, 100% whatever comes out Zelda like from
Right.
from Miyamoto is going to be amazing. So I'm not even worried. It's all good. I wonder which actor. I hope he's not like a known actor. I hope he's somebody unknown that looks very much like Link. You know?
But then I'm so curious too, because when we've seen like things like comic books and anime or other games adapted. Now obviously when a lot of these games originate in Japan, right? So they're like Japanese people, right? But they're obviously animated and they don't look like a
Yeah.
Japanese person. So I'm interested to see, is the casting going to be a person who looks more ethnic? Is it going to be a white dude with blonde hair and blue eyes, like how Link is literally like animated? Like I don't know. And even thinking about Ganon, is Ganon going to be CGI? Is it going to be a person they put a lot of makeup on, which I
A lot
kind
of
of
makeup
hope.
on.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hope it's not
exactly.
like, yeah, I don't know. So many questions, but I do think
Yeah.
with Miyamoto there, he's not gonna let it be whack.
No, no, he's gonna be.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's gonna make it awesome. He's gonna
yeah.
whoever's gonna Link, as long as like you're not Tom Holland shows up as Link now. Like, yeah, I hope it's not something like that because I don't think star power is gonna help you on this one. It needs to be the
Right.
story driving the movie, not so much the person in charge or the person leading the role or anything like that.
He already cashed in his game credit. He played Drake, Nathan
Yeah,
Drake. So I don't. Yeah, I didn't
but it
see
was
it, but it was weird to see Mark Wahlberg as Sully. Like I was like, I guess it
yeah.
makes sense. Like,
I thought it was interesting, but I do think it's a genius stroke for Miyamoto to be involved because if the Uncharted movie was actually kind of like, I don't know, produced by, the one of the main guys that actually is behind Uncharted or the Naughty Dog Studios, it kind of gives it extra kind of credibility. And it
mm,
means that, as long as the IP is treated with respect, I feel like they will actually pull it off. And I do think Sony is a good bet because they're already into games, so they will
right,
probably understand exactly where they're coming from. Fingers crossed.
right. You're right about that too. Regarding having the people maybe who were associated with the IP of the game, because I look at like The Last of Us and how that was adapted from the game
Exactly.
to the. I mean, the TV show is amazing, and there are people I talk to who never even played the game who want to go back and play the game, and I'm like, the game is so good, the series is
Yep.
so good, and like it's cool. Like they did a great
Yep.
job of adapting and paying homage, but also like oh man, the backstory behind what was the guy's name, Frank, Bill and Frank, the two friends of the main characters or whatever, and like kind of giving their backstory, and Ron
Yeah.
Swanson being like the person cast. I was like, when I watched it, I was telling my wife, I was like, that's gonna win. You mentioned BAFTA, but I guess here it would win an Emmy, which is
An
like
Emmy.
for
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
just thought they did a great job on that episode. So anyway,
Yeah.
um, well, speaking of origin stories, I'm interested to see, yeah, if the Zelda movie, like how that goes about, because the Zelda lore is so, I mean, it's almost what 30 some, almost 40 years deep at this point. But speaking of origin stories, I want to segue, and this is a kind of a bad segue, but I want to segue into your origin story, Harvey. It probably not as eventful as Link, but
Well, maybe.
or maybe
Or
I
is it?
don't know. I guess we don't know. That's what I'm about to ask you, man. We're kind of gonna talk to you. You're the crux of this show. Is finding more about you, because obviously we wouldn't even be here doing this podcast if you kind of didn't bring this crew together. You're like the party leader, like I trying to equate it to like a RPG, staying in
Oh,
video
I
games.
see. The
And so
character that actually leads the crew.
yeah, you're the party leader, man. The
Amazing.
Proxima is your baby, and
Our.
our baby.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
before Proxima, can you tell us about like your history working in games?
It's a long history, and I'm normally really bad at telling it. Like I actually like try to resume, and I'm like, I worked on these things, and they're all right, I guess, and then I move on to that better things. But yeah, no, like so I've been in the industry for like 20 plus years now. I started in
Okay.
early 2000s. Started like working in QA. Like I don't know if you guys know this, for everybody listening and watching, like there's a thing called certification that all games have to go through.
Okay.
And back in the day, when you had physical discs, you had to actually send, like, because there was no day one updates or day one patch or anything like that, the
Right.
disc, the final game needs to be exactly like it is. And if it was broken with bugs or whatever, it would just be shipped with it in it. Well, and many games had that, right? Which is horrible for anybody buying games and when they ship a bunch of units to the shops and stuff. So certification is basically what happens before the games get printed, which is basically a bunch of people testing a bunch of different things. One of them is like trying to break the game. Me, like trying to actually play the game as a QA
Okay.
tester, trying to break the game as much as possible. But then there's also people going through legal, going through like age certification and all these other things. So I spend maybe the first like year or so just working for a studio, for an agency doing certification for a bunch of games. So that's basically when I fell in love with working in the industry, because I kind of tested games like Knights of the Old Republic, Halo 2,
Nice.
Red Dead Revolver, like so many, like it was so many back to back. Every week was a different game. And for me, it was like, so this is it. I get paid to play games every day, 8 hours a day. This is baller.
It,
This
it,
is
it was the
amazing.
pay good?
The pay was horrible. It was
Oh,
like
okay.
penny.
It was okay. I had to ask because
It
I'm
was
sure there's a lot of
bad.
people like, hmm.
I was so bad. I could barely pay rent, but I found something that I enjoyed. So I'm like, I'll make it happen, make it work some way, somehow. I moved on over to, after that didn't work out, because you have to play games really fast, break games really fast, and you get to a cadence that is not sustainable anymore. And then I had to find a full-time job. I moved over to Sega, so I worked in a bunch of games at Sega, and that gig was full-time. It was not contracts anymore.
Okay.
So finally some cadence to the money coming in all the time, which is nice. I tested games in Sega such as Worms Forts and Rome, Total War
Oh
Rome,
yeah.
and
Okay.
Outrun, and I don't know, a total football manager as well. Like the very
Okay.
first one that came out years ago, did like localization for that game. I still have the master somewhere here at home for the
Wow.
Portuguese and the Spanish somewhere. And it's really, really cool. It was amazing, amazing experience, but that kind of ended up badly for reasons that I'm not going to.
Okay.
Not because of me. It was because of Sega, how I was treated. And then I saw the negative side of the industry as well. And then I realized that if I'm going to do this and be a developer, I need to be actively developing games, because QA, unfortunately, they, like, even though I spent about a good, I don't know, it was like 4 to 6 years doing QA, they not really treated as like the main core team of development. They are treated as outsiders. It's
Mm,
like once the game is done, send it to QA to actually check, and then comes back to the developers so we can actually make changes, right? And it sucks. It really sucks. Like I felt like an outsider a lot of the time, and you're like, I'm helping you making the game. I'm actually making sure that the game doesn't
right.
break and is important work. So shout out to all the QA out there, because you guys matter a whole lot. You guys are great. So I then studied a lot to become an animator, so I could actually go in and work as a developer, being an animator. So I started doing that. And that was early 2000s. And then I worked in a bunch of different games, different companies. So I worked in GoldenEye, the reboot with Daniel Craig for the Nintendo Wii. I worked on Dead Space, and then I worked on Crisis. I worked on Fable. I worked on uh, Horizon Zero Dawn, and then after that I worked
Battlefront.
on, no, Total War, Warhammer, in between,
Okay. Okay.
and then I worked on Battlefront, and then I worked on
Gotcha.
Battlefield, and then I came back to Battlefront, and then I worked. So there's been a bunch of stuff that I happened, and then I worked in a bunch of I worked in about 3 metaverse games at this point, and then basically at this point I'm kind of working for myself, and this is when Proxima and these lovely people here in this podcast came together, because as you can tell, it's a long career, many years doing many things, bouncing around, moving countries, and you got to a point that I felt like I needed something of my own. I felt like I needed to kind of work with people that I enjoy and create an environment that is incredibly creative and,
Right.
fosters like, a good vibe and creativity and good, like the things that you see here in the podcast. Hopefully that's
Right.
basically what I decided to kind of like start. And now we have Proxima, and we've been here a couple of years now.
I mean, I'm so intrigued. I mean, just like what even like got you into going back to like, okay, I want to do Q&A. Like, did you stumble? How did you stumble upon that? Because I feel like a lot of us
Yeah.
play games, but like, who thinks to be like, yo, I want to test games, and then from there be
Yeah.
like, yo, I'm good at doing. I want to animate them. Like, what was
Yeah.
the I don't know, the shatter points. You mentioned Spider-Man earlier. Like Spider-Man shatter point was being bit by the spider. So
Yeah.
what was
By the
it for you?
spider.
Yes, yeah.
Same thing, really. One day I was bit by a spider, and then I started.
Touche. Touche. I walk
So
right into that.
no, but it
Okay.
was actually kind of bizarre. So I had a friend that I worked in temporarily in an office doing like graphic design, and we met, and like we worked like for a few months together, and then he disappeared. And then we met on the train, out of all places. And then for some weird reason, I remember that this was at the beginning when Gmail was created. This is how long ago it
Wow.
was. Because I remember we were talking about he had a Gmail account, and at that point it was like invite only. And I'm like, how can I get one? At that point, it was such a
Oh
big
my
thing.
God.
So we met, and then I was asking him, so what do you do now? Like, we know all that stuff. And then he told me that he was QAing games. And I'm like, what? You're testing? You get paid to play games? And he was still at a point that people didn't even know that this was a thing. It was not known whatsoever. So he was like, yeah. So I work for this agency. I'm contracting, and they call me whenever they have a new game, and I go over and I play a game, and then I play for a week, and then come back, wait for the call again, and it keeps going and going. And I'm like,
Wow.
damn, this is amazing. Do you think I have what it takes? It was like, well, do you play a lot of games? Like, yeah.
You look check.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think you can play for like 8 hours a day, every single day of the week? I'm like, yeah. So then he basically like, don't worry, here's my phone number. I'll put your name down, and fingers crossed they'll call you someday. And you don't like, I spend the next 2 weeks just praying and like crossing everything to make sure that hopefully they will call me one day and be like, here's a gig, right? Here's a game. And it's like, and at that moment I'll shine, and I'll play so hard that I'll break the console. And then I went and I did the thing, and they liked it. And then they just called me back a bunch of times, and it was great. And this is how I got it.
And it
Random.
literally was a phone call, or was it an email like, hey, come in?
It was a phone call.
Okay,
There was no
gotcha.
email. Like,
Okay.
It was the time of the Hotmail, so it was
Oh,
very
okay,
little
gotcha.
email. You get spam, and that's
Okay.
about it. Like the real stuff haven't happened on the phone at that point.
Man, and I mean, you were kind of running down some of the stuff I mean, some of the stuff like it's anything, but like some of the games, which are AAA games you worked on, but you worked on indie games too, right?
Indie games too. Yes, I did
Okay.
work on indie games too, and they are so much more fun to
I was
work
gonna
at.
say, what is the difference? What would you say is the big difference between, aside from budget? I'm sure between the AAA and the indie game.
In an indie game, it's just everybody. You know everybody that works in the game. That's the biggest, like one of the biggest things. Like you wouldn't believe how many people it takes to create a Battlefield, right, or create a Battlefront or a AAA game. That normally
What was
takes
the team
multiple.
size for Battlefront?
Battlefront, it was like, I think it was 3 or 4 studios, and each studio, at least we had about 500, and then all other studios had like 100 plus people, right? So, and we had to come together and work on different parts of the game to then make one game, right? So there was space, there was planets, there was all kinds of stuff, the multiplayer, the single player. So it's a lot. So because it's so many people, you don't really know much more than your department and maybe the departments surrounding your department. So animation and maybe like rigging and sound, maybe. That's most of the people that you actually kind of deal with. Maybe art a little bit as well, but you never like talk with engineers, you never talk with people like that because you're just making noise. So just like do your job and then let us do ours. But in an indie game, because there's only so many people working in this game, many people have to do different things, and normally it's about like 2 to 10 people, maybe 20 people. But everybody knows what they do and everybody
Yeah.
appreciates each other's work. And then everybody gets hype for the work.
Yeah.
Normally there's one person doing one thing. So one animator, and then there's going to be one rigger, and then, or maybe like one animator, one VFX artist, one sound artist, and things like that. So because I'm an animator, I don't know nothing about sound. Whenever I animate and then they add sound, I'm like, whoa, this is
Right.
amazing. And then you just keep hyping each other up. And that environment is the best type of environment. So this is why I don't want Proxima to become huge at any point. I want
Right.
us to be small and basically contain that we know each other and we gel well with each other and all that stuff. I think that's where the fun is in games.
Well, and I heard you mention, because I'm learning literally on the go. Like I so much every time we have a meeting, our weekly meeting, I feel like I'm always listening. Well, I'm naturally always listening because I work in sound, so I'm always checking out, listening for stuff. But particularly when it comes to our meetings in a team, because for instance, I just heard you say, I think I know what rigging means, but can you describe what a person who does rigging
Yeah.
does?
So imagine, have you ever seen Cow and Chicken?
Yes, I
Do you
remember
remember
that
how?
show.
Do you remember how like the chicken didn't have any bones? There was a boneless chicken in that show,
Yes, yeah, it's just like a head and a
right?
body, and it was kind
It
of
was like
just
really floppy.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
a, a rigger puts bones on a character. That's
That's a good
basically
way
how
to.
it is.
Okay,
Yeah. So that's the simplest way that you can explain. It's really complex and technical, and it really depends on what kind of character you have. If you have like hair and cloth and fur and like all that stuff, it becomes really complicated. So shout out to all the riggers out there because they do a lot of work. But it's very much like if animation is like on the background and people don't know most names of animators that worked in their favorite games, rigging is one step further from
okay,
that as well.
okay.
So it's actually some of the there's many different roles in games that are very much not known or not understood, because people, unless you're in the industry, you don't know what you're looking for, what you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing. But yeah, rigging is actually something that is very technical and very cool.
I guess I would equate it to and thinking about from what I know already of the way it's set up in sound. So someone like myself as a sound designer, and then we have Johnny on the team who's a composer. The person who does the implementation or the programming creates the logic of how these assets that we create go in. They kind of give the music a frame, a bones to allow it to be interactive. Maybe
That's it.
rigging is kind of the same way with the on the visual aspect, right? To a
On the
degree.
animation side.
Yes, yeah, on the
On the
animation
animation side.
side.
So
Right.
there's no animation without rigging. Like if you, otherwise you just
Got
have a
you.
model doing this stuff, right? So it needs to be have a rigging pass, so then you can have bones and controllers. You give it to an animator, and at that point the animator goes fun, and then just
Okay,
starts moving the
got you.
character about, so you can
Awesome.
then have animation. So
Nice.
there's a process to this. It's very complex. I
Man,
don't
that's
know anything
awesome.
about rigging. I'm
All
not a
right.
rigger, just so you guys know. I'm an animator, not a rigger.
Got you. It
Yeah.
sounds like a T-shirt we need to make. I'm an animator, not a rigger. It just sounds
Love it.
like a very game centric kind of thing. That yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you to share, as succinct as you want to be, a good and a bad, or maybe they're one and the same lesson you learned while working in the industry.
In the industry.
Yeah, like
Um,
something good you learned and something bad you learned.
should I start with the thing, something bad first?
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
always better.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, something bad. There's a lot of politics in this industry that it's get in the way of creativity. That is the biggest bad thing that I can tell you as
Okay.
of now, because there's so much money in the industry, because there's so many huge companies in this industry, because there's so many people wanting power and higher ranks and having a big say.
Mhm.
Even within developers, there's a lot of politics and a lot of things that basically are not game related that happen that gets in the way of the game. And that was a surprise to me, and it was hard to navigate, and it took me years to actually know how to navigate that. It's very hard for you to actually having to justify yourself in everything you do, and making sure that you actually have always put your best foot forward, and making sure that you're always doing a good job, and making sure that you're always constantly repeating the same things all the time to the same amount of people, just so they have peace of mind that you're doing a good job. And that's actually kind of frustrating in a lot of ways. the best thing about this industry is surrounding yourself with the people that you enjoy creating the most.
Nice.
And there's many people in this industry that are just there to make good games. Most of the people in this industry, I would say, are there to make good games. This is the minority of the politics situation that I was talking about. But unfortunately, this minority is actually in charge of many things. But I do think that there's most of the people in this industry want to create amazing games, and when they don't happen, is because a bunch of different situations happen between the good idea to publishing the game, most of the time. So surrounding yourself with people that you enjoy working with as best as possible. Doesn't matter if it's in your team in animation, or if it's in your department in art, or if it's in your own company like we do here in Proxima. That is the best way possible. Like-minded people that have the same energy than you, people that are positive as you, people that, want like nothing but doing the best games and having fun and passionate about stuff.
Right.
That's the best thing about this industry.
Man, well said. I was gonna ask you, like, what was the impetus of creating Proxima, but honestly, like, the other answers you've given have all kind of let me know, like, this is why. All those things have kind of led to this is where we're at, for sure. The last thing I want to ask you, Harvey, I think this is just be funny, is I'm just gonna say this: in another life, you would be a I just thought that would be a fun way to,
Now that's a great question. I never thought about that. In another life, I would be I don't think I'll be anybody else. I kind of like where things have gone.
Respect.
Yeah. I don't know. If you would have asked me who would I like to be like in another life, maybe Barack
Or what
Obama.
would you want it to be? Like, I don't know, like another passion you had. You're like, I'm really good at like making crepes, or I don't know. Like, I don't know. I would have been a baker. I would have been a restaurateur.
A crepe maker.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I fancied myself an actor at some point.
Okay.
I thought about studying theater. Yeah, at some point.
Okay.
But it's because animation. Like through animation, I learned that acting is really important.
Okay.
And when I was animating many years ago, because I've been leading and directing for many years, but when I was animating, you could see me here in the office in front of a camera, just going like, "So you said," and like just doing
wow.
acting. Yeah, 100%. So we can have reference, so we can then animate towards that reference. So because of that, like some people told me that you're pretty good at this. You naturally, when the camera is rolling, you go and scene, and then you just change. So, part of the job as animation director is to actually knowing what the game needs and trying to give it its best needs possible, and then being the bridge between that and then having a nice actor coming into what they call the volume, which is basically the mocap room. Coming into the mocap room and then delivering the best lines and acting the best things and like running the best way and jumping the best way. And a lot of the times it's about you, the animation director, telling them, look, in the game right now, what's going to happen is this: the characters in this mode, and they just end up fighting here, these people, and now they go into this lake to fish some fish for whatever reason, and he needs to actually just relax, right? So just show me the emotional depth that you have here, and then they go ahead and do it. Right. And sometimes you have footage of the game to show them. Sometimes you don't. You just have to make them imagine. But it is your job to kind of like, be that bridge and like squeeze as much acting as possible.
I've learned a lot, man. And so, as we wrap up things, I'll just say, if you all want to find out more about Proxima, what we do, the people who make up this team, buy some merch, find out about the IP and stuff that we're working on. The place to go is proxima.studio. We are, of course, this is for the players. We love playing games as much as we love making them. So we do this show for the players, right? So on that note, we've given out where to go. You've heard about Harvey. I will see you, same bat time, same bat channel. This is the place. This is for the players. And till next time, y'all. Peace.